Lately, it feels like every villain in Hollywood is auditioning for a therapy session. We've entered a cycle where evil always comes with some kind of baggage. If a character burns down a village, the script rushes to show us the childhood trauma that made them do it. We are constantly asked to emphasize, to understand, and to forgive. But there's a growing hunger for something else. A hunger for the pure evil villain. Just a terrible person having a great time. And for some weird reason, we love those characters. So why is that? Why do we love some villains but absolutely hate others who do basically the same stuff? There's something going on, and that's what I want to break down in this video. Big Jack Horner versus Governor Ratcliffe and the Coachman. Big Jack Horner is the gold standard for honest evil. He is a giant magical arms dealer who wants to hoard all the magic in the world simply because he wants it. He didn't have a rough childhood or a villain origin story.
Just loving parents, and stability in a mansion, and a thriving baked goods enterprise for me to inherit.
And he still chose to be a monster because he thought it was more fun. What makes Jack so incredibly refreshing is that he eliminates the psychological tax on the viewer. We don't have to navigate the murky waters of his childhood to justify his crimes. He owns his monstrousness. There's something weirdly relaxing about a villain who never lies to you about what he is. He doesn't want your sympathy, he wants your magic artifacts, and he's perfectly happy to walk over his own employees to get them. Contrast this with Governor Ratcliffe. In terms of criminal statuses, Ratcliffe's rap sheet is pretty similar to Jack's. Unchecked greed, systemic exploitation, and a total disregard for the lives of others. Yet, Ratcliffe carries a greasy residue that Jack lacks. This stems from his pathological insecurity. Ratcliffe is the personification of the petty bureaucrat. He's only seeking power to quiet the voices of the London aristocracy who look down on him. And that's the thing about him that makes him so unlikable. His evil is petty. He's the kind of guy who takes all the credit when things go right and throws his own guys under the bus when they don't. We've all had a boss like that. Then we have the Coachman. If Jack Horner is a fun fantasy evil, the Coachman is a true crime evil. There is no joy in what he does. He lures kids to an island, lets them trash themselves, rounds them up to sell as labor. There's no fun in it. Like, he doesn't even seem to enjoy it in a theatrical way. The reason the Coachman is so hated compared to Jack is the proximity to reality. We've never met a giant baker with a magic umbrella, but we know that child predators and traffickers exist. The Coachman breaks the animation safety net. His actions are too close to our actual nightmares. Jack takes people out with a unicorn horn that turns them into glitter. The Coachman sells kids to a salt mine. The Coachman already pushes Disney into nightmare territory, but the next pair of villains somehow top it. Commander Rourke versus Judge Claude Frollo. Going from greed to corrupt authority, Rourke and Frollo are a really interesting pair because, on paper, they're doing the same thing, mostly. Both are authority figures attempting mass exterminations, but Rourke gets called a badass by half the fandom, while Frollo is pretty much universally despised. Rourke is a career soldier who decided his pension wasn't big enough. What makes him cool to some and a monster to others is his total lack of emotion. His attempted extermination of the Atlanteans isn't motivated by racial hatred, but because their life force is worth more on the black market than it is in their chests. He's a man of spreadsheets. When he punches Milo in the face or orders his men to pack up a living goddess in a shipping crate, he's just optimizing his portfolio. We call him a badass because he has the competence we wish our own leaders had, even if he's using it to commit a massacre. He doesn't give a big speech or anything. He just checks his watch and waits for his operation to end so he can retire on a beach somewhere. Then you have Frollo, who was easily the most human kind of evil Disney ever put on screen. And again, that's why he's so hard to watch. Frollo thinks it's his divine mission to rid Paris of sin. He wants a monopoly on morality, and that's why it's so uncomfortable to watch him. Look at the first 5 minutes of his movie. He chases a refugee on horseback, kicks her hard enough to crack her skull on the cathedral steps, and then tries to drown her baby in a well because he thinks it's a demon. That is a deep-seated religious psychosis. And then there's the Esmeralda situation. He is using the full weight of the church and the court system to stalk a woman. And in the Hellfire sequence, he basically admits out loud that if he can't have her, he's fine with her dying. He claims his own obsession is a test from God. We hate Frollo more than York because we've all seen this guy in real life. Rourke is more of an exaggerated take on authority figures, but Frollo is the corrupt judge, the abusive godly father figure, or the creep in power who thinks his lust is God's will. He's a hypocrite who sniffs a woman's hair while he's ordering her execution. Rourke might have no problems offing you for your wallet, but Frollo will destroy your entire world and tell you he's doing you a favor by saving your soul. If corrupt authority feels terrifying, just wait until the betrayal comes from someone who once promised you safety. Scar versus Lotso. There is a specific brand of villainy that cuts deeper than a random monster. The traitor. When the threat comes from inside the family, the heartbreak is intense. In this arena, Scar and Lotso are the heavyweights. Both are defined by the fact that they look someone in the eye, promise them safety, and then push them into an open grave. But while we buy Scar's merchandise, we want to see Lotso shredded in a garbage truck. Scar is the cool uncle gone horribly wrong. He's the classic disinherited prince, and honestly, he's a blast to watch. He's sarcastic, he's dramatic, and he's got that dry British bitterness that makes you almost overlook the fact that he's a fratricidal maniac. When he drops Mufasa into that gorge, it's horrible. It's a high-stakes political assassination, and we give him a pass on the evil scale because he provides a good show. He's the guy who takes out the king, steals the crown, and sings a banger while doing it. On the other hand, Lotso. There's no cool factor here. He smells like strawberries and talks like a friendly grandfather, but he runs Sunnyside like a forced labor camp. The difference is in the petty spite. Look at the incinerator scene. This is where Lotso officially becomes more hated than Scar. The toys literally just saved his life. They pulled his pink polyester butt out of the path of a moving vehicle, and 5 minutes later he had the chance to press the emergency stop button and save them from being melted alive. He doesn't do it because he wants them to feel the same abandonment he felt. That's why he's irredeemable. Scar's evil has a goal. Lotso's evil is just poison. He uses family and togetherness as a marketing slogan to keep the other toys in line. Scar is a villain from a storybook, but Lotso is a villain from real life. He is the friend who secretly hates you and stabs you in the back the first chance he gets. That makes him infinitely more disgusting. And if you think betrayal is the deepest Disney can cut, wait until we get to the villains who tried to erase a child from existence. Because the next comparison proves that sometimes it's not the crime that chills you, it's the smile behind it. Hades versus Maleficent. Attempted murder of a baby is pretty much the line you don't come back from in a story. And yet, Disney managed to give us two villains who both do exactly that. And we came away loving one and being genuinely unsettled by the other. Hades is a guy who's had it up to here with his coworkers. Watching him is like watching a CEO go through a public meltdown because his interns accidentally sent the lingerie meant for his side chick to his wife. He's got sass, he's sarcastic, he's chronically stressed, and he's clearly the only person in the underworld with any brains. We like him because he makes us co-conspirators. When he looks at the camera after Zeus says something obnoxious, basically asking us, "Are you seeing this?" It makes his actual crimes feel like just another item on a very long, very annoying to-do list. He's the first villain to treat evil like a corporate job that he's desperately overqualified for. Now, forget about relatable. The 1959 Maleficent doesn't want your empathy, and she definitely doesn't want to be your friend. Think about the sheer psychotic level of spite it takes to curse a newborn to die just because you weren't on the guest list for a party. Most people would just send a passive-aggressive text. Maleficent shows up and drops a death sentence. There is no warmth in her, no funny henchmen. Maleficent is the kind of villain who gets under your skin precisely because there's nothing to analyze. She doesn't have a traumatic backstory or a relatable motive. She's just a petty tyrant throwing a tantrum because she didn't get her way. Mind you of someone? People that petty having that much power is terrifying in a way that stressed out Hades never quite manages to be. Big supernatural evil is terrifying, sure, but what about loud and self-obsessed? Gaston versus Lord Farquaad. There is a massive difference between a villain who scares you and a villain who just makes you want to roll your eyes. Usually, scary involves magic or armies, but sometimes the most hated person in the room is just the guy with the loudest voice and a fragile ego. The thing that makes Gaston so uniquely disgusting is that he has no need for a dark tower or a magic spell to be a monster. He can just be his horrible self from his local tavern. He's the peak of high school hero toxicity. The guy who's used to being told he's a god because he's got a thick neck and a good chin. Look at how he handles rejection. He tries to destroy Belle's life and literally attempts to throw her elderly father into an insane asylum just to force her into a marriage. But the real evil act is when he riles up the village.
She's as crazy as the old man. The beast will make off with your children. He'll come after them in the night. No. We're not safe till his head is mounted on my wall.
He uses their fear of the other to turn a group of peaceful bakers and blacksmiths into a murderous lynch mob. We hate Gaston because he represents a very real, very human type of evil. The popular bully who abuses his influence over the mob to destroy anyone he doesn't like. While Gaston is out there inciting violence, Farquaad is busy being a living, breathing meme.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
In the book, he's a tyrant. He's rounding up magical creatures and dumping them into a ghetto, and the movie refuses to give him a single second of respect. Every scene is a reminder that this man is a walking inferiority complex. He's a short king with a giant cape and a haircut that's just tragic. He's so insecure about his status that he's willing to marry a woman he's never met just to get a crown. The whole thing is built around the fact that he takes himself completely seriously while everyone around him clearly doesn't. We can't help but laugh at him. He sends knights off to die and calls it a sacrifice he's willing to make. And the delivery is so perfectly cowardly that it becomes a bit. You don't fear Farquaad, you just want to watch him get embarrassed. But this next pair goes after the whole system and twists it from the inside. Ursula versus Dawn Bellwether. Ursula and Dawn Bellwether are doing the same thing. Yes, staging a coup. But the flavor of their betrayal is what makes one a legend and the other a total parasite. Ursula is arguably the most honest person in her entire movie. She's a sea witch, sure, but she's really just a high-stakes lawyer with tentacles. She doesn't hide who she is. She puts the contract right in front of you, explains the fine print, and tells you exactly how much it's going to cost. If you're dumb enough to sign a soul-binding document without a lawyer present, that's kind of on you. What makes her an icon is the sheer audacity. She wants to rule the ocean because she's fabulous, and she knows she'd be better at it than Triton. Her evil is a performance. She's taking what she wants with a song and a dance. We love her because she represents the unfiltered desire for power without the annoying guilt that usually comes with it. If Ursula is a diva, Bellwether is a snake in a cardigan. She is the twist villain that people actually love to hate because she hits a very specific note. She spends the whole movie playing the overworked assistant card, pretending to be the victim of a system that overlooks her. But look at her endgame. More than just wanting power, she wants to set the entire city on fire. She literally starts a race war, drugging innocent citizens to turn them feral just so she can create enough fear to slide into the mayor's office. That's what makes her worse than Ursula to a lot of viewers. She's a sneaky sneak who exploits your sympathy for her. It's disgusting. Ursula is still bad in her own way, but she doesn't manipulate you by making you feel sorry for her, and there's a bit of respect in that. Up next is a villain who wants you to feel for him, and another one who doesn't care what you feel. Jafar versus King Magnifico. Jafar is a classic Grand Vizier who played the long game for decades. While everyone else in the palace is busy flattering a sultan who collects exotic animals and forgets his own laws, Jafar has been quietly running the entire country from behind a curtain. He's the actual brain of Agrabah, and everybody knows it, including him. What makes him so fun to watch is how professional he is about the whole thing. He's got the secret lair, the hypnosis staff he uses to puppet the Sultan around like a ventriloquist dummy, and a sarcastic parrot who is his one honest relationship. Even the Cave of Wonders scheme is impressive. He spent years engineering a plan to retrieve a magic lamp using a specific category of person, a diamond in the rough, and then identified and recruited that person from a street market. He uses Aladdin as a tool, tries to have him executed the second he stops being useful, nearly pulls it off, and only loses because of a technicality he couldn't have predicted. His response to losing is to immediately go for a bigger play, become a sorcerer, then try to absorb the power of a literal cosmic entity. We overlook the attempted murder and the forced marriage because he operates with a charisma that most villains don't bother with. But if we talk about King Magnifico, the story is different. The reasons fans bounced off this guy was the neediness. Magnifico is basically a toxic social media influencer with magical powers who collects the wishes of every citizen in his kingdom. He spends half the movie singing about how generous he is while holding everyone's hopes and dreams hostage in a basement. The problem is what he does with it. The evil here is just pathetic. He's so insecure that he rejects a 100-year-old man's lifelong wish because he thinks it might inspire people to remove him from power. When Asha starts asking him questions, he has a total emotional breakdown. He's a hero in his own head, which makes anything other than praise feel like an insult. That's the core issue with Magnifico. Jafar was perfectly fine being feared. Magnifico needs to be feared and adored at the same time. And the second those two things stop coexisting, he unravels completely. And that just makes him exhausting rather than threatening. Power-hungry kings are dangerous AF. But imagine villains who don't even need a throne to dominate the room. Dr. Facilier versus Ratigan. Facilier is arguably the most charismatic villain Disney ever drew. He's got that New Orleans slickness, a guy that lives in the margins and thrives on the deal. What makes him a fun villain is that he's basically an underdog. He's broke, he's in debt to literal demons, and he's trying to con his way back into the top 1%. All he has on this quest is a deck of cards and a shadow with a personality. We root for his style because his evil feels like a high-stakes gamble. When he turns Naveen into a frog, it's a sort of personification of the grind culture taken to a supernatural extreme. We like him because he's a performer who knows he's on a stage, and he makes the audience feel like they're in on the scam. He's the guy who steals your wallet but leaves you impressed with the sleight of hand. We agree, Facilier is a cool jazz track, but Ratigan is a glass-shattering scream. He is the Napoleon of crime, but he's governed by one massive, pulsating insecurity. He refuses to admit he's a rat. He spends the whole movie wearing a cape and sipping champagne, pretending he's some refined aristocrat. But it's a paper-thin mask. Ratigan is the ultimate abusive boss. One of his henchmen, Bartholomew, gets a little too drunk and calls him a rat during a song. Ratigan doesn't just fire him. He rings a bell and watches with a cold, smug smile as his pet cat, Felicia, eats the guy alive in front of a whole crew. That's the moment the fun stops. We hate Ratigan because he's a bully who uses fear to keep everyone in line. When his plan finally falls apart in the clock tower, he stops pretending to be a gentleman and turns into a literal monster, tearing his clothes off and hunting Basil like a wild animal. He's the personification of a narcissistic breakdown. You can't have a drink with Ratigan because you never know what word is going to trigger him into a murderous rage. So when we're watching these movies, evil is not really the problem. Of course there's going to be a villain for our hero, otherwise there'd be no conflict. The problem is pettiness, insecurity, and emotional smallness. As the jury, we are weirdly forgiving of mass atrocities, royal betrayals, and cosmic scale chaos, as long as it's done with flair and charisma. We will buy the merchandise of a man who got rid of his brother, a god who tried to poison a baby, and a baker who uses people as bridges because they provide us with a high-intensity experience. They take up space. But we reserve our disgust for the small evils. The characters who remind us of the toxic figures in our actual lives. The ones who lie about their motives. The ones who are boring. The ultimate crime in the world of animation isn't murder. It's mediocrity. If you're going to be irredeemably evil, you have to be grand. Because at the end of the day, we don't want a villain who makes us think. We want a villain who makes us keep watching till the end. So if you want to keep watching villains with ambition, check out our last video about every single time DreamWorks almost ended the world. Link's up there somewhere.